What's up, my fibromyalgia friends? How are you? Happy Friday. Hope everyone is getting ready for the weekend. I know Halloween is next week, right? Are you ready? Are you interested? Is that your favorite holiday? Please leave a chat. Let us know how you're doing. Do you have any fun plans for next week? What kind of costumes or what do you like to do? I know we get involved with the teal pumpkin, so we hand out a variety of things. I'm not sure what's going to happen this year since my mom is traveling, but we'll see what happens. So come on in, leave us a comment, leave us an emoji. I'm going to get started with this presentation right away. And then afterwards, we can do some chit chat. But I would love to know where you're tuning in from. How are you doing? Please check in with us. And I'm just going to get started with this presentation because I always love to share what worked for me and to see if it resonates with anyone else. Because what if I told you in this sense that you have a lot of power in your health and it may not feel like it right now, especially if you are running from doctor to doctor trying to find your healthcare provider team, which is what I was doing initially before I was able to reclaim a sense of health. So I'm going to get into this presentation and dive into the beginning stages of functional medicine and what initially drew me in. And we're going to have multiple presentations on this, so stay tuned for that. And welcome, Stacy. It's good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. And also, this is helping me understand the time zones of where people are, which I will talk about at the end of this presentation with a little bit more of what's upcoming for the Fibromyalgia Community Conference. So let me get started with this. We're just going to begin with these basics of functional medicine 101. You may have heard you may have heard the word functional medicine. Some people may have posted it on social media to tell you to look for a functional medicine provider. So I'm going to give you a top level view of understanding of what functional medicine is, and then we're going to dive into some more details, and then afterwards definitely we're going to take some comments, questions, and continue this. And I'll explain to you the purpose of today as well. There's other reasonings for today. So I'm going to dive into the presentation right now. So we have Functional Medicine 101. I am a board certified functional medicine coach with additional training in functional nutrition, neuroscience, and I've trained with some very great providers in the functional medicine space, which I always nerd out about. Functional medicine determines how and why illness occurs and restores health by addressing the root causes of disease for each individual. And if you'd like to get more information, you can always go to the Institute of Functional Medicine website, which is ifm.org. And you can also find additional providers. They have a directory of providers that you can search for. You can see their training because there's various trainings within the functional medicine system. You can see what additional trainings they have. And if you are watching this and you are a healthcare professional, they do offer trainings for a lot of healthcare professionals. So this could be a good resource for you. And we'll get into more details and stuff because there are some barriers that I continuously hear about for functional medicine. So I want to hear from you. If you have gone and seen a functional medicine provider, or if you've faced any additional barriers when trying to address your health through functional medicine, please let me know because we're trying to change it. And I've been actually talking with other providers that are creating new models within functional medicine as well. And within functional medicine, the things that we are always concerned with, usually which differs from sort of this modern allopathic medicine, is generally we're used to what drug will help cure the patient. But with functional medicine, we ask, how did we get here? And what can we do about it? So it allows for more of a comprehensive treatment approach. And within this functional medicine model, we definitely want to emphasize to empower patients and practitioners to work together, which is great for all of us in the fibromyalgia community, right? We need this collaborative care model, and you're going to hear those key terms coming up quite a bit, especially in 2024, as we are collaborating with other medical professionals, because we know that it's frustrating to work, but you need a team. Especially with fibromyalgia care, we know and understand it's a team. And these are some of the functional medicine principles here. So it's individualized, it's patient centered, it's science based, and there's a lot of details that go into this, which I'll dive into right now in this presentation. And it's important to kind of explain this. And again, this is very top level, and I'm going to be presenting concepts based on the pillars in additional videos coming up as I continue to test the software. So, for functional medicine and all of this, we see health and wellness as a continuum. So, we're continuously moving up and down. But what we ideally want to do is catch you and look at these underlying root causes before you get the disease diagnosis. And there's a lot of conversation about preventative care and how do we formulate a better and improved healthcare system with preventative care. And this is a challenge. And as a health coach, I come in here and what my goal is as a health coach when working with clients is I just want to make sure that people get turned around towards facing wellness, creating enough awareness and empowering all of you to face towards wellness. And you may go up and down, right? There's setbacks. You may start feeling good and you may have a setback. So you might feel like you've taken steps back. But the whole goal is that you're facing towards wellness and you're going to constantly move up and down this continuum. But what we're really trying to do with this aspect of root cause, underlying, figuring out what the underlying conditions are, is we're trying to prevent the cycle that we see, especially with autoimmune conditions, because they always run together. And this is well known, right? You get one, you're predisposed potentially to another autoimmune diagnosis. But can we interrupt that to prevent that cycle from continuing? And that's the huge question. And it also deals with individualized care. So, what we can do for each individual is going to be different across the board. There's not going to be one thing that's going to help. There's basic fundamentals that we'll get into that might, but your approach may be different from someone else based on other genetic circumstances and environmental circumstances. But unfortunately, we usually wait to get a diagnosis at the end of the curve, right? If anyone's like me, I'm in between autoimmune conditions. So I was really suffering with early onset symptoms, and the provider said, we can't give you a full-blown diagnosis yet. We know something's autoimmune is going on, but we can't treat you. So they sent me away and they said nothing could be done, which is completely incorrect. We know this now. There is something that can be done, and this is the goal that we have here at Support Fibros to help you support you through that process a little bit better, because I do have a lot of experience in that setting. I love this diagram of the tree, and we have this available on our website too, which I can share with you so you can download your own copy. So this is the functional medicine tree, which I just love connection to vegetable gardening. If anyone's a gardener out there, you know what the leaves start to look like or disease as it spreads, but there's so much going on. It's the environment. Can the plants take up the nutrients they need from the soil? Is your soil depleted? What's going on with pests? Because pests attack, the leaves decline, and everything like that. So it's similar fundamentals in some ways if you compare this model to this root cause medicine of what's going on with the root systems. And so by addressing root cause rather than the symptoms themselves, we become oriented to identifying the complexity of disease. We may find one condition has many different causes, and then likewise, one cause may result in many different conditions. See this a lot with toxicity exposures, how it can manifest in different conditions and different diagnoses. So this is where we look at different root causes for these disease. And as a result, functional medicine targets specific manifestations of diseases in each individual. So again, it's individualized care. And what we really focus on, or what I focus on a lot too, and what we bring to the Support Fibromyalgia Network is a focus on these modifiable lifestyle factors. So things at the root, because they can have a tremendous impact on your health and illness. So how well you sleep, your current approach to food, whether there's movement in your life and what that looks like, how you manage stress, what's the nature of your connection to others? And it's all these contributing factors that have this root cause for all these manifestations of symptoms and different diseases. And it's going to vary. And we take a more holistic or whole person approach. There's a lot of key terms floating around on the internet right now. Essentially, everybody is kind of saying the same thing. It's just subtle differences in approach. And you'll hear this too with functional medicine, integrative medicine, multidisciplinary care, collaborative care. The whole thing we have to drive though from a patient's perspective is that it's patient-centered. So we need to make sure that patients are involved every step of the way and then patients are heard. So that's really huge no matter what you call it. It's huge that patients have this involvement. So you can see these are the personalizing lifestyle and environmental factors that is kind of this focus on that you can empower yourselves in your own life to do and establish and kind of an experiment on. I became a biohacker doing a lot of this stuff on myself, and I did it. I didn't go to a doctor. I have to say that, even though all the time we say disclaimers, please talk to your doctor before you change your your approach. But honestly, I didn't have a doctor to address this to even do a disclaimer with. So I had to do this myself. And that's why we just want to empower our community to understand what is available and what you can do. So it's all about empowering yourself with education and as much as you can moving forward and these fundamentals. Because I know accessibility is a reach sometimes when it comes to some of these things when it comes to functional medicine. And there are people working on it to make it more accessible for insurance. So please know that the system is changing in a good way and we are listening to patients. This is a huge diagram here, but I know it gets complicated. But this is why it's important to understand that we're taking a physiology and function approach. It's all comprehensive, and we're organizing the patient's clinical imbalances here to look at the strengths and imbalances of what's going on because we have to see everything as a whole. So we're focused on interconnected biologic systems in contrast to what we're normally used to. So normally we're used to independent organ systems, right? So you go to the GI doctor, cardiologist, they see differently. But when you have things like maybe structural injuries, so you've suffered a back injury, you're not necessarily talking about that with the GI doctor, but you need to, it does matter. So if you have nerve damage or back injuries from that, I know it doesn't seem intuitive to share that with your GI doctor, but something is all connected with how and why there's a lot of manifestation of pain. We go through chronic pain and we have other symptoms as well. So, with functional medicine, we do focus on the physiological interconnectivity, developing treatments that cover everything for the patient, not just the disease itself that's we think is in question. This is the type of focus that we start in recognizing that the body's components are all interconnected. So you cannot treat a simple headache without also affecting other parts of the body. And so this is how we view health as a process of maintaining physiological efficacy for the short term, medium, and long term amounts. So we're not just trying to fix it for the short term. We're looking long term, like how can we prevent disease or manage disease, potentially putting disease into remission. So for the long term. And where it counts is we're looking at, you see on the left side, retelling the patient's story. So we visit medical history viewed through the lens of what we call ATMs. It doesn't give you money, unfortunately, but we're looking at antecedents, triggers, and mediators. So you see here that antecedents are predisposing factors. So these can be anything from genetics to the environment that you may have grown up in. We're getting a lot more information on environmental factors. So for people that grew up on military bases, maybe exposed to a lot of agriculture, there's still talk too about water sources and resources of where. So these things can all affect us and can also play a role in genetics. Obviously, genetics we know now is not our destiny, but some of these things can impact us with what we're exposed to, or these triggering events that we call activators. These can be anything from surgeries, major infections. A lot comes up with mono in these kids, chickenpox, shingles. So all of those things. And now with what we went through with the pandemic as well, anything from trauma, toxins exposures. A lot of people have with buildings, past mold, mycotoxins. I know there had been a lot of conversations a while ago on asbestos, like what you were exposed to with inhaling. All of that kind of contributes and could be an added factor for all of this. Then we have the mediators. These are continuous perpetrators of like flaming that fire. These are contributing and keeping your symptoms going. So this could be anything from poor sleep, chronic stress, poor nutrition, ongoing toxin exposure. This is all added into this clinical imbalance. It might be these contributing factors as you see from all of this. And again, down below, you'll see the modifiable lifestyle factors. That's what I focus in on as a health coach. And that's what I focus a lot of the patient community on, because that's where you can really make an impact at home and you can make a difference in your own lifestyle by focusing on those. But if you understand how we look at this biochemical diversity, each of us is molded by our genetics and our environment. That means we are prone to different types of health challenges based on our physiological makeup and our environment reality. But we have to look at this balance between internal and external body. And then from there, we design something very patient centered. So we always know, and many of us in the fibromyalgia are really familiar with this, is this constant battle between patient and a disease centered treatment approach. So, what that may be is we're not necessarily treating the underlying condition that led to the disease. So, a patient centered approach will do this. So, underlying contributing factors, and then we can develop a treatment from there. And it's multidisciplinary, so that's a big thing, and that's why it's so important for fibromyalgia, because we're noticing it's not one drug that can actually affect and, you know, improve our life. In fact, we're noticing that it's actually very limiting when we only look that way, but there's other things that we're going to have to look at, and that's what we explore more. Like, who else on your team could you benefit from? And besides that, to like also formulate a strong healthcare team. But if you're on that side where you're really frustrated at that point, like I was spinning my wheels at one point, coming out of a doctor's office crying. So what I had to do was develop my own plan. What could I do at home that wasn't involved with the regular stigma that they put on fibromyalgia patients? So I totally revamped it, and you'll see me sometimes disagree or reframe conversations with people based on what I learned, because it's what worked for me. Now, it doesn't necessarily work for everyone, and I want to acknowledge that, but you are in the driver's seat of your own health. So I just want you to encourage you and empower you to get creative too with your own health, and also inspire you to do some of your own detective work and experiment on things. So, as we recognize with this whole chart, we recognize that lifestyle choices will help the whole body. And this will lead to more of an inclusive and comprehensive approach to the entire life and the treatment of disease. So, we look at this as a personal approach to healthcare that considers the entirety of the patient, not just what's inflicting them. So, as a total example, as I leave this slide up before I move on, is how this system works. Let's see the contribution to dysfunction. So, let's say someone that was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. You may not only have pain, but you also have fatigue, loss of energy, and decreased exercise tolerance, right? So, you see the energy factor right in there. So, yeah, energy regulation, production, mitochondrial functioning. So this is where you see in conversations mitochondrial dysfunction comes up with that energy management, that decrease in exercise tolerance. But also there's might be some abnormal hormone levels and these dysregulation in sleep wake cycles. We know that the unrefreshed sleep is part of the fibromyalgia diagnosis, so we're looking at communication. How is the endocrine system involved? Neurotransmitters, immune messengers. So this all matters and connects together. We can't just have unrefreshed sleep. Something else is also happening beneath it. What else is also connected? Then we can talk about digestive issues, gas, bloating. So we have assimilation right there, digestion, absorption, microbiota, respiration. So is there gut issues, underlying gut issues? And we know very well now that the gut and brain are connected together. So what is happening there? And also in comprehensive thinking about everything that's involved in the digestive system is important, and it is complex. And then again, as I mentioned, structural integrity is so important. And I think it gets discounted when we do start to investigate solo organ systems. So if you have musculoskeletal injuries, if you have had back injuries or anything of that incidence, and we just recently followed a conference. If you haven't checked it out, Demystifying the Fibromyalgia Conference with the Texas Center for Lifestyle Medicine, they were talking about dental airway structural integrity. So if you have that, it definitely needs to get addressed, not dismissed. but we work on solo organ systems all the time that it gets forgotten that that's part of it, especially if you have things like peripheral neuropathy. It's going to contribute a lot to this structural integrity and things that are happening. So we can't just ignore all of that together. Then there's aspects of the brain fog, lack of ability to concentrate, and that connects to both energy and communication. So there's definitely a lot going on here. And that's why we can't dismiss and just look at only one segment of the body, even though I understand that's kind of how a healthcare system approaches treatment. But if we're only focused on one thing, we may not get anywhere. And that's where it gets frustrating for us as patients because we were working so hard in one area. Like a lot of people focus a lot on the gut, I notice with providers, which is tremendously complicated. And you may not see any results. You may not see any results because you could be like in my case, which I always use, I had concussions, which kicked everything off. So I wasn't addressing the brain inflammation that was very evidently going on, but I had no idea because I was so focused on trying to treat the gut. So I left the brain alone, even though I now realize that I probably should have started with the brain. So, head to tail treatments, and this is where it gets very challenging for providers. I want to acknowledge that. It's super complicated for providers and becomes overwhelming for patients. So, this is why this education and coming together and having more collaborative care is important. And getting our providers collaborative team and sharing with them what's needed and having providers share with each other is an important part of what we're doing also as we move ahead. So just remember all these systems are interrelated. So don't forget that when we're trying to piece things together and also in your conversations. Here's an example of the timeline. Now, I personally love this graphical representation because it allows us to identify factors that predispose, provoke, and contribute to pathological changes and dysfunctional processes in our physiology. And so, what we are looking at is we begin with where you were born, who your parents and grandparents were, your mother's pregnancy history, how you were born, whether you're breast or bottle fed. We learn about your childhood and adult illnesses. There's a lot of conversations around antibiotic use and how that affects the microbiome. I also recently learned about some of these antibiotics, things like Cipro, and how it can actually affect the nervous system. So all of that goes into the timeline to kind of assess. And this can be actually great if you print out and add to your medical file to just have for review for your medical providers, because I don't remember everything. And this might help give hints to maybe directionally what might be needed in your healthcare plan moving forward. Because it all matters and how everything was treated back then. And in addition, adding in any family dynamics, you start to identify what factors in your life, either genetic or acquired, may have contributed to the illness or condition. You can also add in these modifiable lifestyle changes so that we can see where your most significant areas of imbalance exist and determine a concrete plan to try to address those areas. And I talk about this a lot too with my upbringing, and I laugh as much sugar as I got as a child. Ooh, it's no wonder there was some cognitive and health issues too. And was laughing because there's a lot of candy conversations and stuff like that. And I was definitely consuming a lot of sugar as a child. And I didn't understand it was fun. Things like Fun Dip, right? It had this stick made of sugar, dipping it into sugar and just eating that all the time. I could like finish that off. So, no judgment. We're always learning and creating awareness. But as we have these health conditions, what's going to help us feel better? And that's the important piece of all of this. Now, I have more handouts on this, and I'll be doing some more in depth discussions on functional nutrition. So, when we take a look at functional nutrition, what are we actually emphasizing? So, emphasizing high quality foods, phytonutrient diversity to address clinical balances. Although I will publicly share that I am diving into the carnivore and animal based diet plan at this point. So, I might have some different feedback. I'm always curious on plans. I don't just stick to one. I've been experimenting with nutrition because I find that makes the biggest difference with the least amount of side effects for me. So, if you're one of those that wants to learn more about nutrition and have fun with it with an open mind and get curious, definitely join our other workshops and stuff that we're going to be having because it's so fascinating that you can get different expressions, you can notice different changes sometimes pretty rapidly when you change your nutrition. And I do have a bias because it does, again, I feel very empowered with nutrition because I can feel like I can make adjustments in that without severe side effects. I don't personally have much luck with medications. I always get the side effects, major side effects. So I feel with nutrition, I can play around with things, even though I can't cook to save my life, but I'm still learning. So I have tips and tricks for people who may not be able comfortable with cooking or not have fun with cooking. I have whole ideas, but if you do have fun with cooking, I definitely want to invite you in because I need as much hope as I can get, and I'm sure other people out there would benefit from the love and art of cooking because it's definitely a craft and it's definitely an art. So these are some of the things that we're going to be putting together moving forward with the network as well. And within functional medicine, just to let you know, if you are working with a provider right now, please know that there's various plans. And I know sometimes it gets overwhelming too. I will say this for picking certain things. You can see there's intervention plans in there. Then there's the advanced therapeutic interventions. And sometimes when you go to a provider, you get started right away with this heavy duty intervention, like the elimination diet, the FODMAP. It's a lot of stuff to take away. So I definitely want to empower everyone with this to know that there's alternatives, but please, please empower yourself to speak up to your provider. This may not be the right time to start that. This may just be a time where you're starting to create awareness with slowly decreasing processed sugar or slowly learning to cook a little bit more at home. And I just want to tell you that's okay because sometimes the elimination diets can be super overwhelming because you're focused on what you cannot eat. But we need to get everybody acclimated to like, okay, what can you eat? Have fun with it. And this also may not be the right time. If you're going through a lot personally, like just say you're moving, you're starting a new job, this may not be the good time to start an elimination diet because added stress does not contribute well to digesting food and will not get you a good sort of result if you've changed. You may not see the results that you could see in a highly stressful environment. So you need all the resources you can and all the adjustments. So please consider that too. If this is not the right time and your provider is asking you to do this, just let them know and have a conversation. Plus, if you are talking with a functional medicine provider, I would hope that they have these other resources available for you. And you can ask them because they have core food plans. They have a metabolic health plan. So these are subtle adjustments where you're more so focused on taking out the processed food, cooking a little bit more at home, adding more vegetables into your life. So these basic fundamentals. So the fundamentals of increasing energy and information and just connecting. And that's okay. So I want to empower you and everyone to know that I will do more deeper dives in some of these guides. And then also follow me along because, as I said, I've been experimenting with my own nutrition lifestyle and what I did heavily into the walls protocol. And as I mentioned, I'm branching out a little bit more. I'm going to be trying some new things for a little bit. So, that's it for this presentation. I just wanted to jump on here and share with you and let people know you have the power to take control over your health. And please don't forget that it can be super frustrating to find your healthcare team. So if you need to take a minute and empower yourself, please do so. It works and it helps because as someone that again was leaving a doctor's office and they would kind of give me samples from the closet because they didn't know what to do. They were great and phenomenal people, but what else could they do? And they were stuck within their own segment of organ system. So they really felt bad. So we were just grappling at straws. So I would come out crying. And I didn't know that I had a lot more power than I'd never really given myself. So please remember that. And thank you everyone for tuning in. What I'm doing right now, and I wanted to just dive into the presentation before I talked about it, is I'm testing the software. So we have a fibromyalgia community conference coming up at the end of November. So our kickoff event and launch event is November 30th with some special guests. And then we'll get into the details of the conference starting December 1st through December 9th. So we are getting emails. We're scheduling providers right now, researchers. I just got an email from a researcher, so I'm nerding out on that particular research lab that's going to be joining us. So what I'm doing right now is you're helping me test the software. So right now we're doing StreamYard on air, and this is the same environment you'll be logged into. So please go register at fibromyalgiaconference.com. It's free. It's all virtual. You'll get to be in the chat room with us. And also we'll be coming in and out sometimes on social media, but don't forget to register because the best parts will be in the StreamYard platform itself, just like you're doing right now. It's comments. You'll get to hear the speakers. That's where we'll host majority of the giveaways as well. And everything will eventually be on social media, but you'll get the best benefit to asking questions in the StreamYard platform. Because right now I can see your comments through that because I'm streaming on the other social media. But in on-air StreamYard, we're going to have it. So I'm currently testing the software, and that's why I'll be back on live throughout the week next week because I'm trying to test, making sure that I can enter the same platform, and this is what we'll give the providers too. So thank you everyone for tuning in and helping me test the software because it is nerve-wracking. We've started with new software. Last year, we sold out on the platform we had, and we couldn't have any more registrants. So this year, we're using the on-air platform so we can have many more viewers. I don't think there's any chance of us selling out this year. If that comes to the case, then we will obviously open up other means, but you can watch the conference in the StreamYard platform. Some people get distracted with the comments. So we have opened it up where you can watch the stream on the website that we have for you too. And that's just the streaming mechanism. So just register for the conference at fibromyalgiaconference.com. Again, it's free. You'll get the email link with the emails with all the links and some email reminders for all the guests. I'm working on the website, so we'll add those guests shortly. We do have some familiar healthcare providers that we love. They're fantastic. They always have great information. So they'll be back for this year. We have some new faces and new healthcare providers as well. I'm excited to bring in, especially in the naturopathic medicine space, new researchers. So cross fingers that we got a few more. I've emailed a lot of people. We have more community leader stories that I'm excited about. International. So this is international, everybody. Going international time. Shout out to Carrie. I saw her this morning here. I think it's different time zone. She is an amazing advocate at myseveralworlds.com, and she lives in Taiwan, advocates there. So she's helping us with some of the content and interviews for some of our international community advocates, which I'm excited about. Men with Fibromyalgia. Finally, we represent you this year, so I'm excited to have more interviews from you. So we'll be streaming some of the special guests. There's a lot of content to go through, and I'm excited because we're branching out also to other chronic illness conditions that I really want to hear and share their stories with all of you. So let's go through this. Um, okay, is it Vita? I see you're tuning in really tired started. Oh no. It's these combinations of diagnosis that we really have to get through. So I'm just going to get through the comments really quick. And again, thank you for attending this first part. So I put the first part of this presentation out. I try to keep it short because I'm testing the software. So I really appreciate you guys joining me. You're looking for a good fibromyalgia doctor. This is a whole other conversation. So if anybody knows of providers that they could recommend, I know a lot of providers, it's different, right? And again, this caveat, if you want a provider that takes insurance, we really need to get more training of medical providers. I'm going to be honest, in the basic fundamentals of fibromyalgia, there are providers out there, and depending on location, some do telemedicine. So we're really building up our database right now. And thank you so much to people like Dr. Ron and his team at the Texas Center for Lifestyle Medicine for introducing us to more medical providers that want to help fibromyalgia patients. And I know there's so many out there. We always talk with Dr. Pinkston, who's a rheumatologist and has given us a lot of advice on searching and finding these physicians, because right now you might find your best allies in primary care at this point, and we really need to provide better training for them. It's definitely going to be a challenge. Sarah, please reach out, letting me know. Oh, being in Ohio, Sarah, we actually might have some resources for you, so we'll dig in. Thank you, Carrie, for diving in. I know it's late for you. What type of doctor would everyone I see a rheumatologist, but he doesn't think they would help. It depends what's going on. So this gets up to be a complicated question because obviously we want to rule out any other conditions, right? So this is where the team comes together and play and collaborative care. So what can each do before negating it? So has those conditions been ruled out? You've run some other tests. Are you like me, potentially in between? Like something is starting to show in the blood test, but there's no full-blown diagnosis. If you have a good PCP, this can your primary care internal medicine that can be a great ally of what it looks next. But that's why I'm sharing with you things that you can start to do. And we'll continue to share other healthcare providers too that might be great for the healthcare team. And with that conference, Demystifying Fibromyalgia with Dr. Ron, since he's primary care, started in primary care internal medicine, has a background in functional and integrative medicine. So what he did was he brought together dentists, because we never consider dentists, neurologists, especially trained in sleep. So do you need to like have a focus? Do you need to get a sleep study done? Are there airway issues that you're noticing? Can you address some things with physical therapy, occupational therapy? I'm learning more and more about the benefits of occupational therapy, nutrition. Do you want to get a dietitian involved, or would you like to experiment more with your nutrition on your own? So all those components, mindfulness, stress reduction, whatever you feel like your goal is, I think that's a good place to start. Because again, as we start getting referrals everywhere, and then we come back and we keep getting told that there's nothing that can be done, there is stuff that we can do. It just may not be with the healthcare provider itself. They may just be like the checking in, but you're the coach, right? So you're implementing everything. They might just double check your work through lab test results, making sure that there's nothing really, really wrong deep down, certain tests, MRIs, CAT scans, all of that. But what you can do is some of those modifiable lifestyle changes. And it's different. I wish it wasn't this case that we have to kind of learn to do all those things. If you do have a healthcare provider team that's much more aggressive and collaborative, that's fantastic. That's what we wish for all around the country to address this. So we're trying to fill in the gaps of the middle ground. But talk to the rheumatologist, see what's available as a plan. If you've run all the tests that kind of like bring you back to fibromyalgia space because they don't see anything else potentially going on, but your symptoms are severe, that may be where it's time to look at some of these modifiable lifestyle factors, see who else on your team could help you get there. I am a big I'm not a big fan of the word exercise and people just throwing themselves into that world and really overdoing it. It's one of those things where you may avoid the push crash cycle. So that's why I encourage people to at least get some experience with physical therapy and understanding how to implement the stretches without pain a little bit better. It never hurts to get professional instruction and then take it home and be able to implement on your own, because you want to be able to prevent falls, prevent injury, decrease. You don't want to increase your pain. So sometimes getting those professional consults with physical therapists, occupational therapists can really be helpful. And then you can take it, you can implement those and continue those. So that might be a strategy too, when you go about it. Again, if you feel like you need a dietitian in your life, doing that meal planning, maybe you need to maybe it sounds fun to take a class with a chef. There's a lot of culinary chefs. I work as a health coach. may need to find a health coach to work with you. So you're like implementing if you want to exhibit more behavior change goals, like long term rather than these challenges. So there is a lot that can be done. So please don't negate some of this stuff as you go through it, because I know, again, we're constantly searching for the healthcare providers, but that's why I just want to give you guys a reminder that you have a lot of control on yourself too at home. I mean, is there things that you could do to help that work? I know it's hard to figure out, but it is possible. Um, Oh, sleep cycle. This is something I could so talk about and figure out because I'm right there with you. As a former insomniac, I've had to really challenge myself in sleep and look at all kinds of resources with sleep and try different things. It is one of the most frustrating aspects to all of this. So I've definitely done the sleep, the gut issues. Yes, I'm right in there with trying one thing at a time, especially working on those aspects of sleep. We do share a lot of resources, and that's what I'll get into in one of the other pillars. We'll do a deeper dive, and I have other videos available on sleep where I talk about some of the sleep tips. I've been testing a lot with light, so getting natural light. If anyone follows Huberman Lab podcast, he has very extensive podcasts on sleep that you can listen to and see. There's different camps on melatonin. So, whichever camp you fall in, they may just be different. But this light, and we want to talk about more about light exposure, but getting some natural light, working on your light cycles. Be careful of the devices late at night, especially up front in your face, resetting your endogenous melatonin cycles. So, all of that can contribute. It might be subtle things that you might see to like impact maybe just at least helping you fall asleep. I find the biggest challenge to be the deep restorative sleep. That seems to be the biggest challenge for me personally, and I have tried a lot. But I also carry a lot of stress. I really want to change our fibromyalgia community for the better. So it's very hard for me to sleep. I go to sleep thinking about this, and I wake up thinking about this. So, um, yeah, this is where, Sarah, you're getting some information on some functional medicine doctors in your area. That could be a resource. Again, I want to just meet everyone where they're at. Not every functional provider is the same. And so that's why I want to empower you to ask certain questions and give you the basis. If you do have questions that you would like to prepare in advance before you meet the provider, because sometimes, and I'm going to be straight up honest, it can be very costly. And that cost doesn't mean that you will get better. And I have seen some people burned by this situation. You can get burned in any of the premises, but if you cannot afford it, that's also something to consider because it can be very much out of pocket costs, and getting into some of those supplements and stuff which you may not need. And that's why I felt very empowered to work with Dr. Terry Walls, because she definitely defines food nutrition in that first. Supplements are supplemental. So you can't out supplement a poor nutrition. You can add to it, but if you can try to work with food in your life, which is definitely something to learn, and maybe that's the strategy before investing in a lot of potential supplements that maybe your body can't even absorb yet, because you might have some very heavy duty digestive issues, gallbladder issues. Gallbladder comes up a lot in the fibromyalgia community and how it processes things like your fat soluble vitamins. It's an issue. So some of this is talking strategy, and that's why I want to give everybody a basis of what functional medicine could be. And I just want to acknowledge there's some barriers to it. It's not a perfect system. We don't have perfect systems developed yet. You can search for a provider. Definitely feel free to ask questions. Ask to see if they have a discovery call so you can see if this is the right provider. What is it going to cost up front? It's okay to ask those questions. Please, definitely do. Is this someone that's already helped a particular patient before? Maybe that it's a recommended thing and you kind of are familiar with the process that they take you through. Understand a little bit better on the testing that they may suggest. And I have a lot of information on that. Being trained by Dr. Karazian, I do have some information on that. He has his approach for it, and he disagrees with some of the approaches that are naturally done. So utilize the Support Fibromyalgia Network as a resource. So I encourage questions all the time. And if there are videos that we need to segment out and do that, to just make sure you have the proper education. But please don't hesitate to ask questions before you get into a full blown process, because I know it can be costly. And I have heard people invest a lot of money up front and they didn't actually get the benefit. So I want to make sure that it doesn't happen here. I know I do love functional medicine principles. I love it. I think it's where it needs to be for fibromyalgia, and I do want to encourage it to get better in the system. So, thank you everyone for helping me with this broadcast. Please stay tuned because I'm going to keep testing throughout the week with more information like this as I test for the conference. So, please definitely know that there's a big conference coming up. Join us. There's going to be a lot of variety of speakers. You can ask your questions. It's going to be interactive. We're going to have interactive workshops like this. Everybody I've kind of mentioned from some of the functional medicine spaces, integrative, naturopathic spaces will be on the stage presenting. There's people that have podcasts right now where you can learn more about their work as well. So we'll be sharing all of that. Let me know, tune in, keep commenting, keep sharing, and keep preparing for the Fibromyalgia Community Conference. The Fibro Nerds are back. We're going to nerd out with a lot of fibromyalgia material. Fibromyalgiaconference.com. It starts November 30th. Thank you. Have a good weekend.